Hi, my name is Hans Eriksson, and I want to welcome you to my second video in lighting and look development. As I mentioned in my first video, and in specific to authoring textures for PxrSurface, one of the softwares that I use is Substance Painter. So I'd kind of like to go into a quick overview in how I author those materials or those textures for use in Substance Painter, for use in Renderman, in this case Renderman for Maya, and also Renderman for Blender, and the workflow that I found that I need to use. Now, if you remember in my prior video that basically, there are two different workflows. There is a metal rough, and there's also a spec gloss workflow to create PBR materials. But Renderman 21, using the PxrSurface, uses kind of a hybrid, and so it uses a little bit of both. In this case, it uses a spec roughness workflow. And so that's what I want to be able to create. I want to create these textures in Substance Painter. So let's go ahead and get started. And the first thing, I'm going to go New, and I need to choose a template first of all. Everything else is correct. I want to use OpenGL because Maya and Blender both use OpenGL. And I kind of like 2048, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to open up the FBX that I'm going to use is that default sphere, and I'm going to use that, and the template is where I need to start. And as you can see right now, I really don't have a template. These are the default ones that come with Painter. And if you notice, I have one here that's spec gloss, metal rough, metal roughness, metallic roughness, spec glossiness, but I really don't have one that says spec roughness. So I need to create that template. And so that's what I'm going to do first of all. To start out with, though, I'm just going to go ahead and choose the spec gloss, and I'm just going to go ahead and accept that. So now I have everything here right now. I'm going to go ahead and in this layer stack, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to find a substance that I know will work. And I'm going to go metal, M-E-T-A, metal, and rust. That is the same substance that I used before. And this one right here, metal brushed rusted, was the substance that I used in the first video. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop that in here, and now you can see that I have this substance here. The channels that are defined are diffuse, specular, gloss, height, normal, and emissive. Well, I don't want the emissive, so I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm going to go ahead and add a roughness to it in the texture map, and I'm going to remove the glossiness. Now if I look at my channels here, you can see that I got diffuse, specular, normal, and roughness, and height. So I got diffuse, specular, height, normal, and roughness. However, I don't know if those channels are activated, so it's not. So I'm going to turn on my diffuse, and this is what's coming in from the substance. I'm going to turn off the base color. I'm going to leave the normal on. I'm going to turn on the spec, leave the glossiness off. I'm going to leave the roughness on. The metallic I'm going to turn off, and the height I'm going to leave on. So I have these channels activated, and I can see that they're mapped in, and I've got all these highlighted. So if I happen to do a quick render right now using the internal V-Ray that they got, you can see that I'm getting a successful V-Ray render using this particular shader. And you can also see that if I change my environments, you can see that the, whoops, excuse me, here we go, where is it? Okay, you can see that my environment, or that my render is adapting to whatever environment I throw it in. So, looks like everything's good to go. So I'm going to turn that off. But now what I want to do is I want to be able to create a template so that I can have this come in just like this every time I open up and I want to create a texture set for a particular asset. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come up to File, and I'm going to go Save as Template. And when I do, I have the chance to create a template, and I'm going to call it PBR underscore PxrSurface. And that kind of identifies that I'm going to be creating a PBR texture set, and that it's for the PxrSurface material. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to now let me see, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to go ahead and discard this one right here, and now I'm going to come in and I'm going to change this to OpenGL 2048, and if I come down here and I go to the bottom, you can see I now have a brand new preset, PBR PxrSurface, and I'm going to go ahead and reselect that sphere, and let me see, OpenGL and 2048. Okay, everything is selected correctly. I'm going to hit OK, and now if I look, I got a diffuse, specular, height, normal, and roughness. I'm going to go ahead and click that off. I'm going to go ahead and add this substance. It's a metal brush, rusted, just as before. If I look at my channels mapping here, I got to enable my height. You can now see that that's enabled. I scroll down to the bottom and I make sure that my channels are turned on correctly. I turn off the base color, leave the normal, add specular, keep the roughness on, turn off the metallic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, got it all. Now, I can go ahead and let's say this is my fantastic object. I'm all set to go. I've created a texture set now for this particular object, and I'm happy with it. So, and I want this to be in all my scenes. This is part of my scene. So now I need to export those, and so I'm going to hit Export Textures, and if I go ahead and do this, you can see that these are not putting out the correct textures that I need. So what I need to do is I need to create a new configuration. Now I have one here. Let me see. I do not have a spec gloss, so I'm going to go ahead or spec rough, so I'm going to have to create a new preset for exporting my textures. So I'm going to go ahead and hit a plus there, and I'm going to call this preset, same as before, PBR PxrSurface. And this is a texture set that I want to export every time that I create a texture set for configuration with Renderman's PxrSurface. Okay, now what are the maps that I'm going to need? I'm going to need a diffuse, a specular, a height, a normal, and a roughness. So let's go ahead and start with the diffuse. First of all, a diffuse is an RGB map, but I would also like to include an alpha channel in case I ever need it. So I'm going to hit the RGBA, and that's going to create that. I'm going to go ahead and X that out, and I'm going to click on Texture Set and underscore DIFF for Diffuse. Okay, now I need to come over here. I find my Diffuse channel, wherever it is here. I don't want the base color, I want Diffuse. I'm going to grab this right here. I'm going to drag and drop it over RGB, and I'm going to say from RGB channels. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab that Diffuse again. I'm going to hold it over my alpha channel, and I'm going to grab it, the A channel or the alpha channel. Okay, this one is set up. Now what it's saying is, when it puts out, the naming convention is going to be texture set. Well, what's the texture set? My texture set is right here, sphere. So it's going to be named sphere underscore diff. And that's a good naming convention for me. So what is the second one I'm going to need? My specular channel. So my specular channel, again, is going to be an RGB. And this time, generally speaking, I only need one map that's going to have an alpha channel that I can input into presence in my PxrSurface. So all I'm going to do here is create a RGB map. And I'm going to go ahead and X that out. I'm going to go texture set and underscore SPE spec. And same as before, I'm going to come down here to specular and drag and drop that and hold it right over the RGB and from RGB channels. Good to go. Okay, next will be my height. Now height is a black and white or a luminous channel. So I'm going to go ahead and grab gray or grayscale. I'm going to X that out, go to texture set and underscore and height, HEIGHT. So that particular one will say sphere underscore height. Then coming over here, I'm going to find my height, drag and drop from gray channel. That's good to go. Next one I'm going to need is my normal. Now normal is also an RGB channel. So I'm going to go RGB, texture set. This is a little boring, but this is done one time, NOR. And on my NOR channel, I'm just going to here grab normal, drag and drop it over the top, and from RGB channels. And then lastly, I'm going to need a roughness. Roughness is a black and white or a grayscale. So I'm going to hit gray and bump that out. My naming convention is going to be texture set underscore rough. And then all I got to do is come over roughness, drag and drop over the grayscale or over that icon there, hit grayscale, and now I've created a texture output set that will read PBR surface. So now if I go over to export, you see I'm still on the PBR spec gloss, but all I have to do now is just let me see, where is it? Where is it? Should be there. There it is. That's Renderman PBR. That is not what I want. There we go. PBR surface. I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And if you look now, you can see my texture set is going to be named sphere diff, sphere spec, sphere height, sphere nor, and sphere rough. Those are the maps that I want. Now I normally like to use EXR texture set or textures, and the reason being is they're going to come out in 32-bit. That means things are going to be uh, linearized automatically, and I don't have to worry about linearizing my materials. So I'm going to choose EXR, and then I'm going to choose a place where I want them to go. In this case, let's see here, this PC, I happen to be here, and Ericsson, and I think I'm using this one right at the moment. Source images, Sphere 2, and that's where I'm going to put my textures, right in here in Sphere 2. And so I am going to go ahead, select that folder, and now all I have to do then is output this to that. So if I hit export, give it a few seconds, I can open up that folder, and you can see that I now have my 5 textures that I'm looking for. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit Save As, and I'm in that very same folder. I kind of like to save my substances in the same folder as my textures, and that looks all correct. Sphere 2 and save, and yes, I'm going to override that. Okay, I can go ahead and close this, and if you notice here, I've got that texture set all included in here. I can double click this right here, and it'll open up that material. And the beauty of it is I realize this is just for a dummy sphere. It's just for playing around, but the beauty of it is I have all these parameters still in play. If I go File and Export Textures, you can see that everything's saved. Everything's going to go here. It's going to be used in the configuration file, PxrSurface, and all of my textures are going to come out correctly. The beauty of that is let's say, oh, well, I really didn't want this to be a brushed metal rusted. I can simply delete that substance. I can come over here and let's say, well, what I really wanted was a brick. In fact, let me just do it with materials and BRICK. I wanted a brick. In fact, this is the one I want right here, this brick stone wall. So I can throw this substance in here, and there's my brick stone wall. I can look at my channels mapping, and I have diffuse, specular, height, normal, and roughness. I need to put this to OpenGL. There we go. And my texture set coming in is, of course, diffuse, specular, height, normal, and roughness. Everything looks good. My diffuse is diffuse, specular, height, normal, roughness. Okay, good. So now all I have to do is, let's say that's what I really wanted. I want to change my texture set altogether. And you can see that this should render just fine. Let's check it out here. And looks like it's working just fine. Pretty crappy normal on it, but it will work. Let's go ahead and choose I don't particularly like that substance. Let's pick another one. Let's try this one. So I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to delete this one. And that one's even worse. Let me see. Delete. How about Groove Brick? Yeah, that one looks pretty good. So again, I have all these channels enabled. I can look here, and I got diffuse, specular, height, normal, roughness. If I go to my basic parameters, I can change this to OpenGL, so I got the correct normal map coming through. I'm just going to leave everything exactly the way that it is. I think my roughness is a little bit, no, that actually doesn't look too bad. So let's go ahead and see how that renders. There we go. Not bad at all. I could live with that. That's my brick ball. So if I then want to go ahead and export that, I can go ahead and export the textures for PBR Surface, EXR maps. I can then know that my sphere diff, and all that is going to be exported just fine. All I got to do is hit export, and I can open that folder, and all of these have been updated for a brick ball. I could go ahead and if I had included those textures into my scene, or if I had already applied the material with those texture names, that material would have automatically updated in my scene. And that's the beauty of this. If I don't like what I've got and I wanted to change and tweak some of the parameters, I can do that. I can export out new textures, and as soon as I open up Renderman for Maya or even Renderman for Blender, it's just everything's going to change automatically, and I'm going to be good to go. So that's a real brief overview on authoring textures in Substance Painter. Very brief. There's much more to it. We'll be creating a lot more different types of textures, but this now is set up to work for PXR Texture or PxrSurface workflow. So I hope this was of some benefit to you, and I will try to put out another one here real quick. In fact, I think the next one I'm going to put in is how to install Renderman for Blender and applying texture materials for PBR rendering in Blender using Renderman version 21. And thank you for watching, and have a great day.